Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deborah Kaufman, and welcome to the ARP Homeless II webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to give a moment. We know that we have approximately 300 people registered, so it'll take a moment for everyone to get in. If you have questions, please be sure and put those into the chat. We are, as I said, very happy to have you joining us today. So as we think about students, we always come back to the ADE vision. And as you know, the Department of Ed is transforming Arkansas to lead the nation in student-focused education. And so today our focus is on how we are serving our students that are experiencing homelessness. And I think this work is very exciting. You are on the cutting edge of this work. So many of you are already doing great things that we will want to hear about. And we know that you're going to be able to learn from each other as we share this kind of information. We're very proud to have these additional funds through the American Rescue Plan, and we'll be telling you about those. And with that, I'd like to introduce our State Director for the McKinney-Vento Homelessness, Miss Jessica Hickman. Jessica will walk us through the presentation, and I will monitor questions in the chat. Thank you. Jessica?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So let's start with looking at and making sure that we have a good understanding of what the federal definition of homelessness is. So children and youth that are sharing the housing of other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason are what we refer to as being doubled up. A lot of times we have a skewed perception of what homelessness actually is, especially in the South, because there's a lot of culturalness that we're used to that we wouldn't necessarily classify as homelessness. They think when people think homelessness, they think about the stereotypical homeless person, not necessarily that people who are doubled up are living in a housing situation where their name is not on the lease, or they're staying with somebody until they can afford to stay somewhere else as considered homeless. But by the federal definition, if you are living with someone else because of a financial need, you are considered to be experiencing homelessness. This also includes students and families that are living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, or campgrounds because of there's a lack of alternative adequate accommodations. So what that means is that if it's by choice, or if it is, again, a financial need for them to live in these situations or under these conditions. And then also living in emergency or transitional shelters. Children and youth that have a primary nighttime residence that is considered to be public, or it's not somewhere that sleeping is typically allowed, are also considered to be experiencing homelessness. We do typically think about people living in cars or living in abandoned buildings as being homeless. And then migratory children who qualify as homeless because they're living in any of the circumstances described above. One of the most important things to consider when we're determining if a student's situation qualifies them for McKinney-Vento status is why and how they ended up in the situation that they're in. Are they living in a camper because they have nowhere else to go and no financial means to make the change? Or are they there because they like living in a camper and they like to travel? Are they living with grandma because mom or dad lost their job? Or did they move in with them because grandma needed help in her older age? So just weighing out the situations and determining if they're there because they want to be there, or if they're there because of a financial need is what's going to help with identification. So the most important thing is to truly examine the why of the situation. There is a homeless eligibility flowchart that's available on the DESE Homeless webpage, and there's a link to it in the title right there that'll be available after this webinar. One of the things that we've made a shift in is to the terminology of experiencing homelessness. We don't say that they are homeless, but that they're experiencing homelessness. It's really important that everybody in the districts know and understand how to get in contact with to make referrals for their local liaison. This chart is helpful for anybody that needs quick reference on how to determine if a child is experiencing homelessness. It gives them the opportunity for somebody. It could be a school bus driver, it could be a secretary, it could be a teacher, but it allows them to weigh out the situation before they bring it to their homeless liaison, and gives them a reminder of what the federal definition of experiencing homelessness is. There are so many people in your school districts that see these students on a regular daily basis, and they're your first line in identification. Like I said, bus drivers, secretaries, teachers, counselors, cafeteria workers, anyone who has regular contact with students needs to be in the know about what the federal definition of experiencing homelessness is, and they need to know who to turn that information into and what your protocols are for your district. It's not their job to make any kind of formal identification, but they do need to know how to get that information to the liaisons so that you all can look into the situations for them. This is the data for the last couple of years for the state of Arkansas as a total on how many students that we have identified to be experiencing homelessness versus our expected number that we would identify, that we would expect to identify to be experiencing homelessness. The formula that we use is 5% of the free and reduced lunch student population. Those are not set in stone numbers, but they give us a pretty good idea of about how many students that we would expect to be experiencing homelessness. Your district may have low numbers and be doing a good job of identification. You might have good community wraparound services that are keeping some of your students from getting to the point of experiencing homelessness, and that's great. But we want to make sure that everyone takes the time to examine their district's identification practices and make sure that they are really up to par. That's what a lot of this ARP funding is going to be for, is to really increase and improve our identification practices as a state. As you can see, that we are historically under-identified as a state. The past couple of years, we've been about 2,000 under the mark of students that we would expect to be experiencing homelessness. And then last year with COVID, it took an even greater dip to about 4,000 students under-identified. So when we get to looking for neighboring coordinators and finding information about how to get in contact with people, especially with this new ARP money and the consortiums that you guys are going to hopefully form, the place to find that information is your school personnel directory. I will show you that page here in just a second. When you get to that page, there is a bar right here that's going to ask you for their job title. And that's where you can find a whole list of district titles. And one of them on there is the Liaison for Homeless Coordinator. So if we go to that directory, and you type district, and go down to Liaison for Homeless Coordinator, you are able to hit View Search, and it will pull up anyone in the state. If you know the specific district you're looking for, you can type right there in district, and it will pull that up for you. If you need to send out an email to all of your liaisons, or if you pull one and you want to send an email, you can always hit export X file, and it will export an export Excel, and it will export an Excel list of the liaisons for you, and you could copy all of those emails and send out if you have a question or you would like to find resources, additional resources, and you can look to your liaisons for help with that. The next page or the next link is the homeless rates. Your October 1 identification numbers are located here. if you get ready to fill, or when you get ready to fill out your application, this is where you'll find those cycle report numbers. If you don't have them handy, if you'll scroll down to the side and go to homeless, you can type your school district in. We'll use Pine Bluff as an example. If you hit search, and it's got your October 1 count and your quarterly reports. If you're looking to find out how your district has done on identification in the past years, you can change those dates and you can pull up a different year and you can compare that with the free and reduced lunch rate. It's on here too, right there. Free and reduced paid lunch counts. So that's how we figure to find if your school district is identifying where we believe that they should be, if they're under or over, and that's where you can find that information. So the purpose of these ARP homeless funds, COVID-19 has had a major impact on all students and families, and there have been unprecedented amounts of students experiencing homelessness and other traumatic events in this country. So these funds are to support the needs of the students that are experiencing homelessness. And the main goal of these funds is to increase identification and improve wraparound services. We're doing those things at the state level. We're doing a lot of different things that we're going to talk about, partnering with different community organizations to help increase identification. And we are hoping that you will be able to partner with some of the same organizations that we are, or different organizations in your community to help increase identification. The main thing is that if we don't know which students need the services, if we don't know that they are considered to be experiencing homelessness, we cannot help them. So ARP1 has already, those allocations have already been released and the process has already started on those. All of the addendums have been submitted for ARP1. They were, it was open to current recipients of the competitive McKinney-Vento grant. And if you are one of those school districts, your next steps is to make sure that your budget has been completed in grants management so that we can get that rolling. ARP2 is what we're here to talk about today. So ARP2 was a little over $6 million. And the allocations for that were formula-based. Part of that allocation was your Title I Part A funds. And the next part of that was your proportion of homeless numbers identified based on either your 18-19 or 19-20 school year. They used whichever number was higher to give everybody a fair chance so that there wasn't any drop in identification that was due to COVID that would keep you from receiving your correct percentage of the funds. 75% of that $6 million is going out to school districts. That is what makes up those preliminary allocations that you've seen. And then there's 25% of that stays for the state admin fund. All of the information on ARP2 is located in the commissioner's memo that's linked right here. In that commissioner's memo, you will find the application, the intent to join a consortium. You will find the link to the CARES Act page where this recording will be posted when we're finished. And you'll find the link to the preliminary allocations. There's also the 16 allowable use of funds for the McKinney-Vento that are listed in there. And then we've also linked the Department of Ed's COVID-19 handbooks, volumes 1 and 2. So eligibility for ARP2. The preliminary allocations, according to the formula that we just talked about, are located here. You can find them on the DESE webpage under the fiscal office's webpage. They have a school funding and allocations. If you'll scroll down, you'll find ARP1 and 2. Districts with preliminary allocations that are under $5,000 have to either join a consortium or forfeit those funds. We encourage that you use your co-op to lead the consortium, but that's not a requirement. Any district can join a consortium, even if you have a preliminary allocation of over $5,000. If your school district says that we have so many other funds and we do not have the time or the ability to dedicate to these to make sure that they are spent the best way. If you want to join a consortium with your co-op and let them help you spend those funds and help your students, then that's absolutely fine. Those funds must be obligated by September the 30th, 2024. With those consortiums, if you join with a neighboring school district, you have to be able to pull enough of your funds to be eligible to receive. So what that means that if 2 school districts want to work together, but their funds are still not above that $5,000 mark, they're going to need another school to join with them. We're suggesting that districts consider using their co-ops as the consortium lead. Again, however, it's not required, and a school can be this consortium lead should they want that. We will be providing support to everybody, particularly to the co-ops. We'll be helping them along the way. That is why we're suggesting that you use them as your consortium lead. They have experience with grants, but if you and a neighboring school district want to get together to work as a consortium, that's absolutely fine as well. So let's look at the intent to participate in a consortium form. School districts that want to participate in a consortium, and I use Bryant School District as an example, will fill this form out. It's located in the commissioner's memo. So it's pretty straightforward, just a one-page form. You'll put your school name and information, your co-op or consortium lead name. If you choose to work with a consortium under your co-op, then your co-op information will go here. But if Brian and Benton wanted to work together, whichever school decides to be the consortium lead, that information would go there. And so that is due back to our office. You can send it to my email by December the 1st of this year. For school districts that are choosing not to join a consortium, but their allocation is under $5,000, you have to send a letter of forfeiture. If we don't either get your application, your intent to participate in a consortium, or your letter of forfeiture, we will contact you because we have to know one way or the other what you decide. So for the ARP application, the ARP2 application is the same whether an LEA is choosing to work alone or if they're joining a consortium. So this is the school example. If your school has a high enough preliminary allocation and you decide to work alone, you'll put your LEA name and then your superintendent information and then your homeless liaison or whoever is going to be your lead on this, their information. Same thing if it is a consortium. If you're in a consortium, every school district in the consortium does not fill out the application. The consortium lead will be the one to fill out the application. So if the LEA is the Dawson Co-op, they're going to be the lead on this, then their information goes here, and then whoever within the co-op or within whichever school district is going to be your lead on that, their information will go down here, okay? Let's look at, I have a sample application. So I just used the Bryant School District again as an example. This is a copy of what the application looks like. You have until January the 11th to get the application in. That's for consortium leads and for individual school districts. So you fill out the top part information. It's just like on the slideshow. On this part 1, if it is just you and just your school district, you'll just put your information right here. If it is a consortium and there are multiple school districts, every school district involved in that consortium needs to be listed. Here's another link in the application on where you can find those October 1 counts, but it's going to be where we talked about over here in the data center by homeless, find your school district, and that October 1 count is right there. So as you go through the application, you'll see the first one asks for simple descriptions and data about how you're going to determine student needs. It gives examples. You don't have to write a 3-page essay, but just very thorough answers about how you're going to meet this criteria. The next one, ask about priorities. If you'll see, it says that priorities should match the 4A evaluation. Down here in the application, you have evaluation topics. So these need to match with this question up here. And then it goes through and asks other specific questions about the quality and evaluation in the budget. Down here, when you get to budget, this section right here explains how you will turn in your budget. District or consortium business managers are going to pull your budget worksheet from Cognos and upload in the Excel format. Please leave it in the Excel format and follow these instructions. The budget worksheets have to have descriptions listed, elaborating as to what's going to be done with the budgeted amount and how it relates. You also have to add an additional column to the side that lists your activity codes. The 1 through 16 authorized activities that are listed in the commissioner's memo, those are the allowable activities for McKinney-Vento. So you have to put which activity code that the budgeted item is going with. And that will be uploaded into IndaStar in the folder that is labeled ARP Homeless II. That folder should already be in your IndaStar. When you go to upload it, and you'll have to click on the drop-down list, and it will show all of the available folders. That one should be available. If for some reason it's not available in your IndaStar, please contact me and let me know, and I'll look and we'll figure it out. And then you have your assurances and your signature. It's not a very long application. Again, you have until January the 11th to get that turned in and uploaded into your IndaStar folder.
Jessica, if
Yes,
they, when you go back up to where the evaluation is, that section matched the section above. So in your example, you have all of those checked, but they don't have to check all of them.
No, ma'am. Thank you. If you look through these and you decide which ones are going to best serve your students, because it's asking how you evaluate the impact of the funds. If you decided that the best role or the best use of your funds was to support 3 or 4 of these, those are the 3 or 4 that you would check and talk about your method for evaluation. And again, those have to match with your 1C priorities. Okay. So the Department of Ed has released a list of suggested use of funds that they're suggesting that the way you use them to go above and beyond what you're already doing for your students. And I've linked it to their original document down here at the bottom. But their main things, again, are increasing outreach and identification, enhancing communication options with students and families, increased counseling and social work, hiring a systems navigator. What they mean by that is a person that is within the district that can help families connect with those wraparound services. We know that being the liaison is sometimes a really big job for one person in a really big district. So if you are able to have somebody that can help families do specific things like find shelters and find housing and rental assistance, that would be a very valuable position within your district. Provide academic coaching and in-person enrichment opportunities, offering early childhood education services. They are really hoping that they can increase the outreach with early childhood education services, The McKinney-Vento law talks about access to early childhood education opportunities, but they are not as bound as regular LEAs are, because a lot of preschools do not fall under the federal definition of a preschool and they don't take federal funding. So the main part of McKinney-Vento that applies to early childhood education is the school of origin law. And any way that we can help get students into preschool with this funding, they are encouraging that. Make systems and processes more McKinney-Vento friendly. Really consider the methods you have of identification and parent communication and how easily accessible those are for people and families that are experiencing homelessness and the barriers that they might have. Help meet rising mental health needs, provide more and better transportation options. They have approved certain uses of funds to even buy vehicles with transportation options, as far as a transportation option, but it has to come with a lot of justification about why that is the more cost-friendly option than to use transportation options that the district already has available to them and just offset the cost of that. So if that's something that you're considering, there will be a lot of justification behind that as to why that's the better option. So just a few ideas that we have considered and looked at and looked at the activity codes for. Hygiene closets. I know there's a lot of districts that have asked about doing hygiene closets. And although you cannot buy like furniture and things to furnish the hygiene closet, buying the things that the students would need, like soap, deodorant, toothpaste, those type of things are allowable. The thing is that you cannot stockpile those items. So the purchases would need to be supported by the data of how many students you have in your school district that are experiencing homelessness and those ages. So if you have 50 students in elementary and 100 students at the high school, the appropriate things that they'll need for hygiene should match those numbers. And just going to get those things on a regular basis versus trying to buy for the entire school year at one time. Mental health contracts. If you want to contract a position, the thing is that that person that is hired cannot be hired solely with McKinney-Vento funds to solely serve students experiencing homelessness. That would be singling them out. However, if you are able to do an invoice service with a therapist or somebody that does teletherapy, that would be something that you could get reimbursed through McKinney-Vento. So that's something to consider with these students going through the pandemic on top of the already traumatic experience of being considered to be experiencing homelessness. Another one is laundry assistance. Some schools have said that they have access to laundromats that have like gift cards. You can buy a loadable card to put money on there for laundry assistance. That is an awesome idea. If you do not have something like that available in your community and you would like to look at possibly purchasing a washer and dryer, that would be allowable, but there are things that go along with that as well. You have to be able to guarantee that it will strictly be accessible for students that are experiencing homelessness. The same thing with that vehicle that we talked about before. McKinney-Vento funds are very, very particular to students that are experiencing homelessness. So as long as you can guarantee that the funds are used for students experiencing homelessness only, then it's a justifiable purchase. Proper training and education on McKinney-Vento identification. If you're going to take the time to train teachers off contract or train bus drivers or whoever you are giving extra training to on McKinney-Vento, then you could pay them for that, because likely at this point in the school year, they're their training days have already been scheduled and set. If you feel like there is a need in your district and they need to know this and you want to take the time to pay them for an hour after school or before school or just off contract in general to learn more about McKinney-Vento, that can be an allowable expenditure because you are training on identification and it's increasing identification of students experiencing homelessness. And then, like we talked about before, hiring additional staff. The only thing with hiring or stipending out a position is that that person needs to know that the sustainability of this position could change once these funds are no longer available. Something that they mentioned was the systems navigator. If you wanted to stipend out a position in each building for somebody that helps those families on site get to the resources and the community resources that they need, that position would just need to come with the caveat that it may not be available to be funded past this ARP2 2024 date. And then the last one on here is the purchase or creation of informative material for families. The NCHC website has a lot of good resources. I'm going to show you real quick. So on the NCHE National Center for Homeless Education webpage, they have a resources link right up here. And then down under general, they have NCHE products that you can order or download. So if you come down here where it says, click here for our list of products, there's a whole list of products of things that you can print or that you can purchase. And if you go down here to order, they have two sides of their ordering website. One is free. You have a limited amount of each one of these items that they will send you for free, no shipping, no anything. And I suggest that everybody do that just because it's free and these are awesome resources. So if you get all of these items and you decide that your school district really needs to order something for all of your students or parents to have, you can use these funds to order the resources and you can order as many as you need. Nothing on here is very expensive. So if you have 100 students in your school district that are experiencing homelessness and you want to make sure that each of the families receive these brochures on their rights, 25 cents a piece, 60 cents a piece for the posters. They're very affordable and you can use these funds to support that. So documentation, everything that you use these funds for, you need to be able to justify why it's necessary and why it's reasonable, just like anything else that we use federal funds for. If you have a purchase that you're going to make that's over $5,000, I do need you to fill out the justification form that we're going to look at on the next slide and send it to me prior to your purchase. And this is just a safeguard to make sure that anything that you purchase is actually allowable under the McKinney-Vento guidelines. Out of our Edgar book, neither the acceptance or of the application or the issuance of the grant awards in any way relieves the LEA of its responsibility to comply with applicable requirements in regards to ARP Homeless II under the Edgar regulations. So that means that just because, you get the grant and you purchase something, you have got to make sure that it follows the guidelines of Edgar. That is why we want you to ask for prior approval on those big purchases, because we would hate for you to do something and it not be able to be refunded or reimbursed through this money. So this justification form, the link is up here in the title. It's very short. All I need you to do is describe the expenditure, describe how the expenditure is necessary for these reasons, and how the cost is reasonable. So if a district was going to look at purchasing a vehicle, I would need to know why purchasing that vehicle is necessary for identification, enrollment, retention, and education of these students, and then how that cost is reasonable. Have they considered bus passes, paying extra for bus drivers? Have you considered all other options? And does the cost of the other options outweigh the overall cost of purchasing that vehicle, for example? And then down here, the cost and the activity code that it goes with. And that's just like I said, so that we make sure that you all aren't doing anything that will get you in trouble during an audit, and that the federal funds are being spent according to EDGAR regulations and McKinney-Vento law. If you are making any purchase with these funds, you don't have to use this if it's under $5,000, but you do need to note on the purchase order or somewhere how it's necessary and how it's reasonable. That is to cover you in an audit if anything ever comes up and they ask you about it. If you've already written your justification, you can print this off and keep it and use it if you want to, or you can just, like I said, note somewhere with or on the purchase order why it's necessary and how it's reasonable. So all of this that we've talked about, the things that we want to do with the ARP2 funds and that we want you to do with your ARP2 funds is all based in identification. We need to make sure that our identification practices are best, and that we are able to provide training for organizations around us that are helping us identify students, and trainings within our LEAs about how to spot those students that might be experiencing homelessness. We need to make sure that those students and their families are well aware of their rights, and that we are serving them as best we can under those 16 allowable activities. And then also making sure that the community services and the wraparound services that are available to these students are being accessed and that they know about them. We're going to talk about some of the community organizations that the State Department is working with to try to help build the infrastructure of student risk, a response to student needs. We have Every Arkansan and Bright Futures here with us today. And they are two community-based organizations. So a community-based organization is entities in the communities that serve students in various ways. Dream Center, which is a part of Every Arkansan, serves students by providing food, tutoring, and other services that they're going to tell you about. Bright Futures organization provides communities with the resources and knowledge to build a rapid response system. Some common community-based organizations that you might already have in your community and work with are Goodwill, Boys and Girls Club, and Arkansas Out of School Network. So community-based organizations serve us with a unique ability to help identify students who may possibly be experiencing homelessness. These community-based organizations are seeing students outside of school. One problem is that we see them in school and they might come to school and be fine. If we don't know what their home life is like and we don't ever see that, there's going to be a gap in our identification. We also are working with faith-based organizations. And a faith-based organization are entities in the community that also serve students in various ways. City Serve is part of Every Arkansan, and they are a community-based organization that serves students by providing resources through faith-based organizations. And then Bright Futures will work with community-based organizations and faith-based organizations to build that rapid response system we talked about. So again, the faith-based organizations in your community also have that unique ability to help us identify students that would possibly be experiencing homelessness. Our goal is to bring all of this together: the schools, the churches, the community-based organizations, all of these services to bring them together to make sure that we are comprehensively meeting student needs. So you've got from the state standpoint and what we're working with, we've got every Arkansan who provides a structure to build after-school programs and resources for families in need. We have Bright Futures, and they're creating the structures within the communities that can respond immediately to student needs within 24 hours. And then you have your McKinney-Vento services, which are your federal rights of students that are experiencing homelessness. And our goal is to, like I said, bring all of that together and make sure that we are comprehensively meeting student needs. We are focused on identification, needs assessments, and then meeting those needs as quickly as possible. So with our state set aside, we are going to be supporting these two community organizations, and we're going to let them tell you a little bit about themselves here in just a second. So the total of all of the ARP1 and ARP2 funds was a little over $8.2 million. And so the 25% state set aside of that total was a little over $2 million. Like I said, we're working to build a rapid response infrastructure of resources that students experiencing homelessness will have access to. And our goal with this is that when we build this around the lens of homelessness, that every student will be able to benefit from this structure at some point. So I'm going to turn it over to our Every Arkansan partners and let them tell you a little bit more about what they do.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Can you guys hear me, everybody? All right. Well, good afternoon. We're so glad to be here. My name is Marius Malta. I get to work here at the Every Arkansan community-based organization I'm going to tell you guys all about. But first, I wanted to thank Ms. Kaufman and Ms. Jessica Hickman for putting this on and for the great training so far. And we personally, as an organization, got trained by Jessica a month back or so. And it's just been a tremendous asset for us to learn more about McKinney-Vento and kids experiencing homelessness, but also what excites us even more is to figure out how we all together on this call together can tackle those problems and really help people during this time. So every Arkansan, our mission is to see every Arkansan chase their God-given dream. And we do know that a lot of kids can't chase their dream if you're experiencing circumstances that hold you back. If you're experiencing homelessness, you can't chase your dream because you have to fight for survival first. You have to worry about your needs that are not being met right away, and you kind of focus on what's next. So what we get to do is we get to come alongside communities, ask them, how can we help? Come alongside schools and school districts and ask them, how can we help to help our kids that are felt like they're left behind, that are not having their needs met, how we can come support them, and then come around with you guys, partner together to bring solutions to the needs. So how we got started, about 13 years ago, Drew Davis, our founder, went out and about and asked in a neighborhood close here in Little Rock if how he can help. And fastly, we acquired a lot of kids that came around, and we started our first after-school program. After a while, we added more after-school programs to it. And at the time we came on, we actually started building out our mobile units. So we have 2 mobile units that go out every day into 20 different communities to provide after-school services, to provide food services to communities out and about in the central Arkansas region. Now, about 2 years ago, we added on another layer to our services that's called CityServe Arkansas. So every Arkansan has CityServe Arkansas, where we partner with local churches. We have about 250 local churches in Arkansas statewide that are on board, that are receiving resources from us that they can hand out in their communities. Now, these resources we're talking about are furniture, beds, mattresses, diapers, hygiene items, anything that you can find in a Costco, we can give out to churches to provide for their needs in their community. Now, the one thing that's always asked for in those orders from the churches is things that kids need to sleep on, sit on, or sit at. Those are the 3 biggest things that churches are asking, because they know the need in every community is that the kids have nothing to sleep on, no desk to sit at, or no couch to sit on, and also diapers and hygiene is our last 4 or 5 big items that we always are asking for. At the Dream Center, we get to have after-school programming. So we're an AmeriCorps program sponsor side, where we get to hire certified tutors that are our AmeriCorps members that join us in our after-school programmings to tutor our kids. We all know that the loss of instructional time was huge last year, and especially through COVID, it was highlighted even more. So we want to provide more and more people to be able to be certified tutors to provide assistance in the loss of instructional time to combat that even more. So right now we're starting our second after school at a church, and we're hoping to expand our after schools throughout Arkansas to provide the resources, provide our AmeriCorps members, our certified tutors to all throughout the state, but also to provide the know-how on how to do it. So overall, as every Arkansan, we do three things. We combat food security, we provide educational enrichment programming, and we want to provide community access. And we believe if we tackle those three things, we can see our kids chase their God-given dream again. We can see that our kids and our families can once again have the ability to dream and to reach out for the stars of what they want to become. So everywhere we go, we feed. Our programs always provide food. This year so far, we've served over 30,000 meals. We've served over 16,000 students. And through our churches, we've given out over $11 million worth of resources to go directly to the communities in what the local church is planted in. And that provides a community access. And we're so excited to partner with the Department of Education, but also with CJ Huff and the Bright Futures organization of how we can make that community access even greater and partner with the communities together to combat needs in each location. Now, last thing, and I know we don't have much time, so I want to leave you guys with some next steps that we'd love to be part of what you're doing. We'd love for you guys to come to our website. It's the everarkansan.org website, and you'll find all the things about what we get to do there. But the biggest thing I'd love for you guys to do is to communicate with us. We want to partner with you guys in helping bring solutions. We're hoping to add more wraparound services to our programs where it may be beyond those 16 allowable expenses for you guys. We want to step up in the other ones. And how can we provide solutions for that? Where we can come together and together partner in meeting those needs holistically. On our website right now, you actually find a map for our Christmas Mall. Christmas Mall, this year, we're partnering with 40 different churches all across the state to provide Christmas for kids in need. So right now, if you go on the website and look at the map, and you might have kids in your area, in your community, in your school that need help this Christmas, I'd love for you to look at the map and see if there's a church close by that you can ask and call and refer their families to get help for Christmas. And that's just one of the things that as we start partnering with you guys and with Bright Futures, as every Arkansan, we want to see the local community be the hero. We want to see the churches talking to each other. We want to see the community groups talking together. We want the community leaders to be talking together, but also we want the school leaders, you guys, to talk to each other and figure out how we can help. So if you have needs, if you have a church that needs to be in a network, that needs to have access to these resources, if you want to get training of after schools or how to do a mobile program in your community, please text our number, reach out to us, email me, get in contact with us, because we want to love to see our kids in this state to have help from all different avenues, because we know it can't be just us, it can't be just you guys, it can't just be us individually, but collectively we can really make a difference in our kids in Arkansas through the lens of kids experiencing homelessness, and we'd love to be a tiny part in the solution. And I want to thank you guys for being here, and we're so excited to see what the future, the next 3-4 years are going to bring, and the change we get to do and get to make in Arkansas. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Marius. Now we're going to go over to our other partner that we've been working with, Dr. CJ Huff. He was the superintendent in Joplin, Missouri when the tornado hit, and his response to this is what helped him bring about everything that he's doing now. And I'm going to let him tell you all about that. So.
Very good. Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay, Jessica?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Well, if you can go to the next slide. All right, so a little bit about our history. We were actually founded before the tornado. We started this work on April 8th of 2010 as a direct result of trying to improve graduation rates in Joplin. When I arrived there in 2008, the biggest challenge that we had as a school district was the graduation rate. We had a 62% on-time graduation rate in Joplin, which was the worst in the state of Missouri. We began engaging with the community in a meaningful way, went through a lengthy strategic planning process, and as a direct result of that planning process, we were able to put together some action plans that ultimately gave birth to Bright Futures. And then, as Jessica mentioned, on May 22nd of 2011, we had our tornado in Joplin. And because we had this framework already in place, we had means by which we could engage with volunteers, engage with donors, meet family needs, meet student needs, meet staff needs. It's a direct result of the disaster, and it just kind of put the good work that we were already doing with Bright Futures kind of on steroids, if you will. In July of 2011, we'd already applied for not-for-profit status. Probably around January of 2011, we received that not-for-profit status after our disaster in July of 2011. The reason for that was that we were getting a lot of phone calls from area school districts wanting to know if they could get engaged with the work that we were doing, because they were seeing a lot in the news and on social media about how we were supporting kids, especially children in need. And in a very short period of time, we went from just doing this work to improve graduation rates in Joplin to supporting kids across the region. And we had about 7 communities in the state of Missouri that in our general vicinity of Joplin that were working together to support these kids. And suddenly city limit signs and school district boundary lines didn't seem to matter anymore. We all came to the realization these are all our kids, and we need to support one another as we supported these children and families that were struggling so much. So currently, the rest is kind of history. We are currently supporting 70 communities in 8 states, as far west as Fairbanks, Alaska, and as far east as Winchester, Frederick County, Virginia, supporting about 250,000 students. But we do have a lot of communities we work with, 18 in fact, right now currently, that are official Bright Futures affiliate communities. And I saw on the list today a number of those communities are on the call. I couldn't catch all of them, but I know I saw somebody from Clinton, Lincoln, and Star City that were on the call, and I'm sure we have some folks from Little Rock and Forest City and some of the other communities as well that we work with. So I think I heard Benton mentioned as well, which is our newest Bright Futures community. So if you don't mind, Jessica, next slide, please. So one of the things that I talk about, and all of you on this call will get this, we talk about Maslow's stuff or Bloom's stuff, which comes first. And I think we all acknowledge that although Bloom's stuff is important from an academic standpoint, we know that those physiological safety, level belonging, esteem needs are essential in our kids' ability to meet the high expectations we have for our children academically. So from a foundational standpoint, when it comes to educating our children and youth, Maslow's stuff, I believe, comes first, and we have to take care of those basic needs first. And I know as well as all of you that we have kids who come to school every day, especially on Mondays, that we have to triage first thing in the morning when they arrive. They're in the nurse's office, the counselor's office. They come to the principal. They're seeking attention. They need help, support, and we're always there for them. And the idea behind this work is to give ownership back to the community of our kids, and take some of the burden that so many of our educators are currently faced with as it applies to meeting those basic needs, and giving that back to the community, and engaging the time, talent, and treasure of our community to stabilize a child's life and put kids on a path so that they can focus on the academic side to the greatest degree they can, while we as the adults help support them on the Maslow side of the equation, if you will. Next slide, please. So as we all know, child well-being, it runs on parallel tracks with educational life outcomes. And as I said earlier, this child well-being piece, we have a responsibility as caring adults in the community to ensure our children are taken care of. And in terms of, if we're doing that well, then we can have higher expectations for our kids and expect greater life outcomes, educational life outcomes for our children and youth. Next slide. So here's the framework, and if Jessica, if you wouldn't mind go ahead and next slide, I'll just jump into the 3 pillars of the framework. So the framework itself, I liken it to a Christmas tree. One question I often ask groups when I do presentations to communities is and it's particularly important this time of year as we all drag out our Christmas trees. In fact, got our Christmas tree out the other day and have it up already at our house. And you know, the thing that I remind people is that your Christmas tree may look different than mine, and the reason for that are the ornaments that we hang on it. Jessica, go ahead and hit the next button. You know, we have ornaments on our tree that have ornaments that maybe our kids have made, something they've made at church or at school, or something we picked up on a family vacation, or something we got from from Walmart when we were first married, or something that was a hand-me-down from our grandparents. But at the end of the day, you know, what your Christmas tree may look very different from mine, but they all look like a beautiful thing. Jessica, next slide, please. And so the idea is that even though all of our Christmas trees look different, the idea behind the work of Bright Futures is we look at the time, talent, and treasure that exists in every community, the ornaments that you have in your community already, the great things that are already happening. It's very much a strengths-based model, and capturing those ornaments, if you will, or hanging those ornaments on this structure, this framework of Bright Futures, and creating something beautiful together. So all those organizations and agencies and programs and services that exist in your community are what makes your tree unique. And then even though your tree may look different than my tree, it tells a story. It's something we respect, and it has a history. Every ornament in our house has a story, and likewise, every ornament that you have in your community has a story and a history, and every organization in your community has a mission and a vision and goals that they want to achieve. And if we all work collectively together, we can create something beautiful. Jessica, next slide. So again, here's the framework, and it consists of 3 basic pillars. Next slide, please. And the idea, as I said, that bringing together the idea of this time, talent, and treasure, those resources of time, talent, and treasure, and tapping into those resources as it relates to our human service agencies, our business community, our faith community, in partnership with our parents is a big part of this work. And schools certainly serve as a linchpin in all that work. Next slide. So the 3 pillars of the framework are this. The first pillar is creating communication and resource structures to meet any child's basic needs within 24 hours. The second pillar is about building community capacity to improve problem-solving capabilities to address the greater challenges faced by today's youth. And the third pillar of our framework is providing service learning opportunities to provide students and teachers curriculum-based hands-on service experiences to grow generations of service-minded citizens. And one of the really cool things when we think about ornaments that the state of Arkansas has, many of you are engaged in East programming, and a lot of the schools that we work with on this front of service learning are already engaged with East program, and really brings to light the importance of the service above self mindset and giving kids those opportunities to give back to the communities that are giving to them. Next slide, please. So as we talk about creating communication resource structures to meet any child's basic needs within 24 hours, what we do is we work with communities to create an integrated system of support. And it's 3 tiers. I'm showing the first 2 here. The first tier is going out to existing community resources. Again, those ornaments that exist in your community already, and creating seamless communication structures to get the resources that already exist in your community to those needs quickly. And so we work with communities to establish that structure. Tier 2, however, is social media. So if we can't meet that need within 24 hours through existing community resources, and there are reasons for that. It could be that you don't have the resource. So you might be in a really small community that doesn't have maybe a Boys and Girls Club or a food bank or something like that wouldn't allow you to meet that need within 24 hours. Or maybe it's the time of day. Maybe it's a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and you learn about a particular need, and all your human service agencies are closed down for the weekend, and you know that you got a family that has a need that needs to be addressed. We take the social media, and this is what it looks like. Next slide, please. So here's an example. So small print, but I think you can read it, but I'll just quickly go over it. It says, help, we have a high school girl in need of a nice outfit suitable for interviews. She is on her own and working hard towards graduation and finding employment. She will need a size large or extra large blouse and dress pants in size 13. And it goes on to say she needs nice shoes, pair of shoes to match. And we always know that shoes make the outfit. And then it has contact information for the person that we want contact in the district to get that resource to the student. In those first 2 sentences, there are a lot of unintended consequences, good in a positive way, of utilizing social media in this way. First of all, it keeps the story of our kids out in front of the community. I think in so many of our cases, we have a communities that are kind of asleep, if you will, and they're not even aware these issues exist. And this is a good opportunity to kind of keep those stories out in front of our community. Secondly, you'll note in the first two sentences of this paragraph, it's highly engaging. It tells a quick story about the kid. Didn't identify the kid, but it does tell a quick story about the student that's compelling and encourages people to offer their support. In this particular case, and I don't know the time, but 95 to 99% of the time that we post something out on social media, once we have the following build up, that need will be met in 15 minutes or less, and it's just a matter of connecting the resource then to the student or the teacher that's in need. We use this resource in a lot of different ways. Trying to track down those unique needs that might exist. I've got all kinds of stories about what that looks like. But sometimes you may have a teacher, as an example, that is in need of a rocking chair. We had a student one time elementary age student who was in need of the teacher needed a rocking chair. He was autistic, and she liked to rock him while she did story time, and he seemed to really respond well to that. And so we were able to put that need out there to the community, and then rather than the teacher going around town on Saturday trying to find a rocking chair at a garage sale or going to a store to buy a rocking chair, there was somebody in the community that had a rocking chair they're willing to donate. And so this is a great way to engage the community in a meaningful way and get resources, because we find that people have things in their garages, attics, closets, things that are usable that may not be of value to them at this time, but could be of huge value to a student, a family, or a teacher that's in need of some support. Next slide, please. So the third tier, all three tiers here, going to existing community resources first. Tier 2 is going to social media if we can't meet that need within 24 hours within Tier 1. Tier 3 is simply establishing a high needs fund to meet children's needs. Those are typically established inside the school district's budget, and people can donate to that fund, and sometimes you just need to cut a check. And so an example of when you might need to go to Tier 3, next slide please, Jessica, looks like this. Excuse me, I guess I'll just describe it. So it's basically gap funding. So if you have a family that, as an example, we had first time we dipped into it, we had an apartment fire. 7 of our families were impacted by that, and they needed some place to stay that night, and we were able to just get them into a hotel that evening and pay for that until such time the right agencies locally could get involved and engaged to support those families. So it wasn't a long-term situation, but we're able to provide some short-term support, and we're able to do that quickly because we had that fund set up. So very seldom, though, it's like multi-tiered systems of support are supposed to work. Very seldom do we ever get to Tier 3. Primarily, we get everything taken care of in Tier 1 and then Tier 2, and as I said, very seldom get to Tier 3. So the first pillar of our work is meeting each child's basic needs within 24 hours by tapping into the time, talent, and treasure of the community. The second pillar of our work is building community capacity to improve problem-solving capabilities to address the greater challenges faced by today's youth. We do that by building capacity through establishing a locally developed advisory board. Leadership matters, and we believe it's really important that we work hard on that leadership piece first. We're all in the education business, and I think we can all speak to the fact that we've seen initiatives come and go, and some have worked well and some haven't. And many times what happens when it doesn't work well is because we didn't have good solid leadership in place to drive the work forward. And so we front load our work by building out an advisory board, a community-based advisory board that has faith partners, business partners, human service agency partners, alongside parents and other community members and school staff to provide that 50,000-foot broad-based leadership that needs to happen system-wide. Likewise, we also like to see Bright Futures Councils, kind of a microcosm of the advisory board at the local school level, to provide some local leadership, because like every community is different, every school community within a community is different, and it takes different skill sets, takes different people, it takes different resources to meet the kids' needs. And even if you have 2 buildings, as an example, your elementary kids may have different needs than your high school age students. So we just have to be cognizant of that, and we feel like it's really important to establish a leadership structure in that sense. Next slide, please. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, that you guys are doing some great things in Arkansas around service learning, but we think it's really important that kids, especially children who tend to be on the receiving end of goods and services on a regular basis, have that deeply held belief that they too have something to give back to the communities that have given to them. And, we all believe that we have time, talent, and treasure that we can bring to bear on the challenges that we face, and our children are no different. Certainly, as Jessica mentioned, with our experience in the tornado, I saw firsthand what kids can do in a not just in our community, but the giving that came by way of children from across the state, across the nation, around the world to support kids. They have giving hearts, and we want to capture that energy and enthusiasm and that really pure sense of giving that children have. And this is a great opportunity to build. We talk about building leadership capacity, those future leaders with a servant heart that we all need. We want to encourage and support that way of thinking through service learning projects. So those are the 3 pillars. And Jessica, next slide, please. So Bright Futures, very simply, the elevator speech, it's about connecting the community to our kids, teachers, and schools, but it's also about connecting our kids, teachers, and our schools to our community and building that relationship. Next slide. Next slide, please.
That's the last one.
Oh, it is? Okay. There was one I thought I had Kim and I's contact information. So I'll put my contact information in the chat box. I do a lot of visits around communities in the state of Arkansas. I'm doing a presentation to superintendents in the OUR Service Center this Friday. Happy to do that if there are any directors, co-op directors on the call that would like for me to do the same. Happy to do that. But certainly, if there's any community that's out there and interested, feel free to reach out, and be happy to schedule a time either in person or via Zoom to take a deeper dive into this work. So thanks, Jessica. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, CJ, and thank you, Marius. If you guys have any immediate questions for them, you can drop them down in the Q&A, and we can try to get those answered before we get off here today. And there, when you get this, the link to the slideshow is in here. Their information is at the beginning of each one of their sections in the slideshow, their contact information, so you can find that there as well. So we're just going to bring it all back together about what we're doing, or what we're trying to do about building the infrastructure to support those student needs. With the resources that both Every Arkansan and Bright Futures brings, and the structures that they've already created within community organizations, they kind of have a blueprint along with the federal rights and the ways that we can serve the students that are experiencing homelessness. We're hoping to really create a strong infrastructure that is meeting those student needs.
So Jessica, we want to do that immediately with these ARP Homeless II funds, but we're also thinking about the sustainability of that, how those relationships really build those wraparound services that can last long after these funds expire. And that's why I'm excited to partner with CJ and Marius and other partners. Our co-ops have been involved in this from the very beginning, as we've talked about this and really designed a picture for what it looks like. I know that we have school districts that are already in partnerships with their community to serve the needs of students. We are not asking you to make any changes. We're asking you to go ahead and keep doing that, but learn about these other resources that are out there available to us, and see if there are any holes we need to fill in. If we do this right for our students experiencing homelessness, then we have an infrastructure built that's going to be able to serve any student in need, not just those identified with homelessness. And I see Phoebe on with us today. And Phoebe, I know you've been so excited about this work, and you're kind of taking, you and Daryl are taking the lead in our work with the state set-aside funds, but could you just kind of tell the story of what it's been like in your thinking?
Sure. Really, when I kind of got excited, well, one, being removed from the classroom for a while, it's good to get back to what we do, the purpose of what we're here for. And we have a church in our community. I'm director of Southwest Co-op and Hope. And this church is a very small congregation, but they have a huge food drive, food pantry. But they didn't, that was, I hate to say that was all, but that was the service that they had. Then when you started talking to me about the grant, and I had the opportunity to go through and tour every Arkansan in the warehouse and started to put those pieces together of, okay, we already have this piece, but I don't know of anybody in town that's doing these other pieces. So how can we get that to our community? Because before I came to the co-op, the school where I was a teacher very much experienced this. A lot of poverty, kids with in and out of, they were always one step ahead of whoever was trying to get rent from them. And since then, I've talked to pastors that I know and like, hey, have you heard of these people? Here's the phone number. You need to call. You need to get this set up. And on the flip side, I've had schools that have heard the message from CJ and are ready to get on board with that. So to see our little area of the state really responding, it's very encouraging, and I'm just excited to be part and help however I can.
Thanks, Phoebe. And you know, people want to help. Sometimes they don't know who to trust, how to help, and this is giving people a language for that help, and bringing people together and really making them aware of each other and how we are working for the betterment of students. So I'm really super excited about this. You're going to see a link in a minute. Jessica's going to show you some links, and we've talked about our 21st century program. And when you think about sustainability, our school districts are required to set aside funds out of their Title I allocations for students in experiencing homelessness. But you know, we have after school programs that can be funded through the 21st century program. And my hope for all of you at the end of this money is that we've learned a lot about the identification of homelessness, that we truly understand it, that we are communicating with each other to ensure that kids are getting the very best services, and that we are putting into place some sustainable ways to ensure that our students' needs are met. So Jessica, fabulous job. Team, fabulous job. Any questions from our viewing audience? I think we've tried to answer them as we go along, Jessica.
I will go over to the next slide, which is my monthly newsletter. If you have, if you're not already on that list, if you're not already receiving it, that's just where any updates I get or any new resources that I come across, I'm sharing with you as we go through the next couple of years. Any ARP updates that I have will go in that newsletter. And so there's a link that you can click, or you can download the QR code right there. And it's also in the slideshow. So if I move too fast here in a second, you can go back and find it. But like I said, it's just any information that I get that I think you guys might find useful goes out in that newsletter. And it's typically the first Friday of each month. So that you have that reminder in there for the districts that are McKinney-Vento grantees. There's a reminder about turning in your monthly forms. And then since this year, we're coming up on a grant renewal process where you'll be able to apply for that 3-year grant, the regular McKinney-Vento grant. All the information about that application will be in there, and anything else that you need. And it's just a little monthly reminder to keep students experiencing homelessness on your mind as well.
Jessica, we need to give a shout out to our family and community engagement team.
Yes, ma'am.
Working right alongside of you. And they too put out a newsletter where they're highlighting some of these great things that are going on in communities across our state. So as we're hearing these great stories, Phoebe, as your community gets it pulled together, we want to write that story up and put it in one of these newsletters, because as Maria said earlier, we want we want our communities to shine. They're the ones doing all the work. They're pulling these projects together. So we want to help tell those stories.
Absolutely. And then this last page is all of the resources. They're linked throughout the slideshow as well, but everything is linked here. The commissioner's memo for ARP1, the 21st Century Grant memo, the NCHE website that we visited. NAEHCY is another national organization that helps with students experiencing homelessness. Their website has so many resources on it as well. Our DESE Homeless webpage, the final requirements for ARP, and that goes for ARP 1 and 2. The website for Bright Futures USA, every Arkansas website where they have the heat map. If you don't do anything else, please go check out that heat map so that you can see the different churches in your community that are already on every Arkansan and City Serves list of organizations. They're already receiving or have the opportunity to receive those resources and help out in your community. I know that I've heard Marius and Tony talk about how a lot of communities, they sign up and they get started, but then they have trouble either housing those resources or getting them out a little bit. If you talk to them and maybe get them, say, we want to help you get those resources out to the community, and they're already there on City Serves radar, it would definitely be a good connection for you to make. The data center links are on here, and our homeless flow chart, the authorized activities, and then the statewide community resource portal. If you haven't gone on there and checked that out, that is resources in the communities across the state that have already been compiled. And you can go on there and add resources that we may not have in there already as well. And we're going to continue to add to that. So at this point, I don't have anything else. Ms. Kaufman, if you wanted to say anything, or anybody have any questions that we haven't answered yet?
I just want to thank everyone, and I am so excited about this project. I hope you will get excited about it. And Jessica is putting together presentations and things. You just need to let her know what you want, what you need from her. She's available to Zoom with your co-op, your community, and help get things going. But we couldn't do it without all of our partners. So every Arkansan, our co-ops, Bright Futures, that's what's going to make all of this work for us. So great job, guys.
All right, thank you.